when I was at Ohio State Reformatory, so we were on the third story and we came around the corner, and I mean, I took one step and I knew. The problem was I knew and I disregarded it. I'm like, something's down there. It does not want us back there. So my friend that I was with was behind me, and I took a couple steps and I was like, I mean, it was like heavy. It was almost like I was walking against wind, but there was no wind. We got maybe like second cell down, and something pushed me, like physically pushed me, like grabbed me by the shoulders, and I turned and I was screaming at her. I'm like, run, 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 run. Like, just go, 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 go. This thing had me by the shoulders and was shoving me all the way down. And the only thing that keeps you from a 3-story drop are like 2 little tiny bars as a little buffer. That's it. And then it's just a 3-story drop.
This is Bigfoot Crossroads. My name's Matt, and joining me is the hostess, I guess is the correct term.
With the mostest?
Of cryptids, creeps, and conspiracy. Natasha, welcome to my home.
Well, thanks for having me at your home, your virtual home.
I started noticing you popping up on social media everywhere.
I'm glad it's working.
It's working.
I do it all myself.
Yeah,
so.
You're the one person that's beat the algorithm somehow.
Somehow it's called persistence, stubbornness, and being really annoying.
Okay.
I really don't know. I have no idea. I wing it. I have no plan.
That's usually the best plan. One of the things that I saw pop up, and I guess it's just because we're in the same groups or something, was a drawing you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looked like an alien life form of some kind.
Yeah.
And it really got my attention. So I wanted to reach out to you and hear about the story, and you volunteered to come on and tell it. So here we are. So tell me what happened.
Well, so what I find interesting, by the way, thank you again for having me on here, because I, a lot of times, deal more so with paranormal experiences of the demon ghost variety. And I had just been telling someone that out of all the stuff that I'd encountered, I hadn't had any extraterrestrial encounters. And story of my life, I just should never say anything because then it's going to happen. But other than, I was young. Gosh, I don't know, maybe 9, 10. And I'm from a small town in southern Indiana. And we went up on the farm in the back of this pickup. Oh my God, I really am a hillbilly. And we were, kids. We were riding in the bed of the truck. We went up on this hill. Oh my gosh, if I came out hill, up on the heel, my God. And me and my brother were in the back. And I remember looking up, and I don't remember a whole lot. I just remember there were these strange lights, like 3 lights, triangle shape, typical stuff that you generally hear about. And it was way, way, way off in the distance. It had nothing to do with us. It didn't appear that it wanted anything to do with us. It was just very strange to see 3 lights that were clearly not as high as the stars, but not on the ground, kind of hovering above the tree line. And they did this weird zippity shape thing, and then poof, gone. All right, so I'm a kid. I don't know. I was like, well, that was weird. I asked my brother, I was like, did you see that? And he's like, yeah. He's like, what is that? I'm like, I have no idea. And then that was that. And I was like, well, it wasn't enough information for me to say 100% that I saw something. I don't know what I saw. Who knows what I saw? And I tend to lean very much so towards the skeptical side for everything. I question everything. There's much weird crap that happens to me. You would think that I would just take it for granted, and I really question everything, even the stuff that I see. And I had just talked to somebody about some alien stuff and made the comment, and I went to bed that night. Didn't think anything of it. And I just laid down like normal, fall asleep. Well, next thing I know, I opened my eyes and I am not in my bedroom.
Wow.
There was no transport. There was no, I woke up, felt something. It was literally, I was out. I opened my eyes and I was no longer in my nice squishy bed, covered in my pillow fort that I sleep in. I was completely naked on this metal table, strapped down. I had a strap across my shoulders. My arms were to my side, and kind of where like your crotch bone and like when your arms are down, your hands, like all of that was strapped down. I had straps on my knees and my ankles, like holding me to the table on my back, and I was looking up. And it reminded me kind of almost like when you go to the dentist and they move that lamp in front of your face to see in your mouth to work on your teeth.
Right.
And it's really, really bright, so you can't see anything around you because the light is so bright in your face. Similar to that, but it was just this very round light or lamp or whatever that was up by my face. So a lot of the room I couldn't see because it was so bright. I could see kind of me my head wouldn't move very far. I don't remember it really being like, it wasn't like strapped down where I couldn't move at all. I could kind of lift it a little bit, like enough where I could look down and see my belly button, but I couldn't actually lift my head all the way off the table. And so I just kind of saw what was just directly around me. And then there was the light. And I was like, man, that me and my brain, I work in mysterious ways. I'm like, damn, that light's really bright. And at first I didn't notice. And then I was like, where are my clothes? Where am I? I didn't notice anything at first, except for, well, this is weird. I'm like, I'm having a really jacked up dream. And then something moved out of the corner. Like I saw out of the corner, and I kind of tried to look over there. And right next to the light, so just right outside where I could get, was that thing that I drew, only I didn't draw the whole extent of it. So it was, obviously, I saw more of it. It was very, very tall. I'm not going to pretend that I can judge distance because I can't. But it was just really tall, real lanky, but it almost had like almost like he had too many beers. Like he had a little beer belly, but not huge. We're not talking like 8 months pregnant, but we're talking like, I'm bloated kind of belly.
Yeah.
And they were like a bluish color. And their eyes were black. And their fingers, they had these really long fingers. Like I want to say kind of like E.T., but blue, but twice as long. I mean, these things are like kind of gross. And I saw one with that weird frill that reminds me of when you get that scoop in that pumpkin carving kit, little orange plastic scoops. You get them at the dollar store. It kind of, if you chopped off the handle and stuck it to the top of like a gray's head, that's kind of what it looked like.
Huh.
And it was looking at me, and then I noticed that there was another one right next to it. And then I saw, it was really close to the light, so I couldn't see a whole lot. So I thought I saw maybe like a shoulder and arm of another one, but it was so close to the light that I couldn't actually see anything because it was right over the light. So it was just blinding me whenever I looked. But I saw the other two, and it just was really weird because they almost looked like they were having a conversation, like their head, like their body language looked like they were talking, but nothing was coming out. But they were clearly communicating with each other, never communicated with me at all. I mean, I was in the dark. But it's like they were talking to each other, and then they were looking at me, and they looked back at each other like they were confused. And then eventually they were like pointing at my stomach, like they were trying to figure out what was wrong with me. That's pertinent here in a minute. I'll get to it, but there's a reason that I think it all made sense. So they're looking and looking. And then next thing I know, they stuck there. It was almost like their hand, like the tip of their finger. I don't know if they were holding something. I didn't get a good view. So I don't know if it came like a beam came out of their finger or they were holding an instrument. I couldn't get a good look, but it was red and it went down. And right above my belly button, I have a scar that I just got last year because they took my appendix out. And it hit almost like they were cutting my appendix scar open, but not my belly button. And then it felt like something was just kind of, I don't know how to explain it, except almost like they were stirring my insides.
Jeez.
Like just kind of swirling them around. And it didn't hurt or anything. It just felt really, really weird. And then next thing I know, they're looking at each other again, look like they're talking. They look somewhat confused, and they keep looking down and looking at each other. And then eventually they pull the thing out, and they use the same red and go over and close the same scar, which my scar is like really dark purple. So it's like you couldn't even, if they did, you wouldn't even be able to notice if they did anything to it because it's pretty prominent. And as soon as they did that, they kind of looked at each other, and then it's like one of them put their hand like on me, like just to kind of, I don't know, like rested on me. And then next thing I knew, I was awake. And what was really weird to me was when I woke up, it was so vivid and so real that I was immediately questioning what happened. I'm like, was that real? Was that a dream? I've never had a dream like that before. I do have very realistic dreams that sometimes they do happen. So it was very confusing to me because it kind of felt like one of those types of dreams, even though it just seemed really far-fetched to me. But when I woke up, my stomach hurt so bad. Like when I say my stomach hurt, it wasn't like, oh, I like ate a bad egg. It was like my intestines. I have IBS. And I've not had any issues with it for months because I've been taking medication and, watching my diet, blah, blah, blah. And I've not had any issues. But that morning I woke up and I felt like someone had just let Tasmanian devil out in my stomach. And it was cramping really bad. And the pertinent information I told you we get to is I am not a normal 30-something-year-old lady. I've had a lot of surgery. I mean, a lot, like 17. So I'm missing virtually everything. It's anything that you can live without, I pretty much don't have. Not only that, but one of my surgeries, they got rid of my original belly button, and my belly button I have now is fake. They manufactured me a belly button.
Wow. Okay.
So if we go along the lines of a typical abduction situation, these bastards came and got me. They were expecting to enter my belly button, which was not like any other belly button they'd seen because mine is manufactured. Once they finally got into my stomach, my organs to reproduce are gone. So I'm wondering, is that what the swirling, were they looking for them?
Right.
In there? Because, you got to think, I'm at the time, I'm early 30s. And a lot of times what they do, they abduct, they either incubate a baby, stick a baby, something about a baby goes in there, bun in the oven, and then they use you for that. But none of my equipment would allow them to do what they wanted to do to me. And I'm like, wait a minute, maybe that's why they were looking at each other so confused, because one, they went to go in my belly button and they realized that's not right. Something's not right here. Like, she's weird. So they were like, oh, well, here's this other entryway. We'll go in. And then it was like, well, shit, where is it? Like, let me look around, and there, it's just not there. And then they just kind of tossed me out, I guess, because they couldn't do anything with me. And it was just so weird because it seemed very realistic. I can still close my eyes. I can still see exactly what they look like. I am not an artist. I was actually really impressed with how well that picture turned out. Because I was trying to explain it to somebody who does a lot of alien abduction research, and we were trying to figure out if we could determine what species or something. And they even sent me a poster with like 150 different species. And they're like, do any of these look? And I'm like, none of those are it. None of them are even close to what I saw. So we were trying to figure out what it was. And it just, in my head, I'm like, was that real? How do you know if it's real? That seemed very real. And it wouldn't have bothered me. I would have chalked it up 1,000% to me having a jacked up dream had it not been for the fact that when I woke up, I was having physical symptoms that correlated with what I just dreamed about.
Yeah.
With my stomach hurting and being kind of nauseous and everything. Like, it was just really weird. And I had to draw it because I was like, man, I need to know if anyone else has seen it. Or, I'm like, does it even, because it sounds like a stereotypical, and me being a skeptic, to be fair, I love stories. I always want to hear everybody's stories and encounters and all of that. But I do I'm always the one that likes to ask questions, poke holes, just because I'm curious and because I had never experienced it before. And then all of a sudden, I got smacked in the face, and I'm like, well, it does seem, for the most part, structurally or procedurally, like a typical gray abduction, only they weren't grays and they couldn't finish what they needed to do to me because I didn't have the right parts. And it did make me kind of, question that, because it was so stereotypical. I'm like, is it my brain associating? Maybe I was just thinking about alien stuff, and maybe that's where the dream came from. I've tried to look at it from all kinds of different perspectives, because it does seem, it's like every stereotypical, they're probably in their ship talking to each other in whatever language they talk. And they're like, oh, just another, day, another day in paradise, Jim. Like, let's go down here and steal this bitch. And we're just going to, pop a bun in her oven, send her back, and we'll, probe whatever they did not probe, by the way. I was like, well, what if they did that, and then it was like, all of a sudden the mission fails? It's like you're a delivery boy or something, and you're delivering a package, and you were given the wrong address, or there's construction. And you're like, well, shit, what do I do now?
You're right. It sounds like your stereotypical abduction story, at least to my limited knowledge on them. But something that stands out is your drawing. If it were just a dream, it's kind of interesting that the beings you saw were different than anything I had seen portrayed before.
Exactly. See, that's what I was kind of wondering, because I was trying to be like, well, if it was a run-of-the-mill, whatever, Betty and Barney Hill, whatever abduction, I feel like what I would have been seeing would have been a cookie cutter gray. I mean, right. Aside from, and these things weren't even really gray, they were blue. The only thing they really had in common with a gray was their eyes. And they didn't really have a mouth. They had like a little slit for a mouth, but I couldn't really see a nose. So their face looked like a gray as far as structurally, but they weren't the same color. They weren't the same height. They had that weird frill. So I was like, that's really weird.
Yeah.
For it to be similar, but very different, like very, very, very distinct if you compare the two. And it was just like that. And what I thought was really odd was, so afterwards, I was talking to somebody about it, like later that day, and I could close my mind, and I still can, and it's going to probably get to me here in a second, but I can close my eyes, and I can still see exactly. I can see everything. I could see them. I could see where I'm at. I could see all this stuff. And whenever I was trying to think about it, it was like all of a sudden I almost had a panic attack. Like I could feel my heart rate going up. I mean, I have anxiety anyway, so I know when it's coming on. And I felt like I couldn't breathe. My heart was racing. I started to sweat. I was like, okay. I'm like, if that was just a dream, that should not do that.
Right.
It was like my body, when I thought about it, my body was triggering an automatic response of how I should have reacted.
How long ago was it?
This was just like maybe 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
Like really, this like just happened. Yeah.
And other than whenever you were a kid and saw the strange lights in the sky, no other like UFO sightings or anything like that in between those times?
Absolutely. To my knowledge, there's nothing that I can recall that screams alien anything. Like I said, most of my stuff is it's like the paranormal side, and some other weird, strange things, but nothing that seemed extraterrestrial to me. And even whenever I saw it, when I was a kid, it wasn't close. Like some people see it and, it comes towards them. No, I mean, this thing had absolutely no interest in us at all. It just kind of zip, 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 and then took off, and that was it. And it never even got close enough for us to, I couldn't tell you if it was 3 individuals, if it was one big one with 3 lights. It was so dark and so far away. All I could see were the 3 lights, and that was it.
Have you told your brother about this?
No, I have not.
It would just be interesting to hear, if he's had any experiences since, the sighting as a child and everything. Or
yeah, because, I mean, it has to be something weird. So my brother's always lived in he's more like the city boy kind of thing, which, I mean, I'm in a town, but I'm a pretty small town. There's only like 2,300 people here or something in the whole county. So, but I am in town.
Right.
It's, well lit. There's lots of houses, but it's nothing nearly as industrial. So I'm like, well, maybe if something was to come get me, they probably would not think anything about our little blip on the map. But where my brother lives, it's at least 10 times the size of where I am. So it'd be a lot harder to be discreet,
right,
about where and everything. But I should ask him just to see if he's had anything, because that was just so. But my thing was, I don't even think the two are related, because the original one never got close enough that I don't even think it knew that we were there, to be honest. It didn't react in a way that made it seem like it was like fleeing from us, or it literally, like, we just weren't there. Yeah, we're literally in 100-some acres of fields and woods, and this thing was way, way, way on the other side. So I don't even think it would be, it got close enough and it came back, for me specifically, because we had some sort of interaction, because we were so far apart that I don't see how that would even be possible.
Yeah, I just recently spoke to a lady who's also has an abduction experience, and she's part of the UFO community. She speaks at conferences about it and stuff. And we were talking about how it seems like people who have these experiences tend to have more than one.
Yes. See, that's what I thought was interesting. Because I just assumed, with me, I was like, it was probably random or whatever. I was like, man, right before this happened, when I was talking to somebody about it, I'm like, dude, I am 30-some years old. If they were going to take me, they would have taken me by now. I was wrong, if that was the case. Again, I'm very skeptical, because I'm like, because I have no tangible, other than the fact that I was so sick in the area that they were screwing around with, and their reaction made so much sense with my anatomical issues. I was like, is that? Because people are like, it sounds like an abduction. I'm like, but was it? I'm like, was I? Are you sure? Like, I don't even know what to call it. I'm like, I don't know. It's like, was it a dream? But I do know that a lot of people, they come in, and it's something, whatever you have, there's something you have, or these people have, that they want. I don't know what it is, but they want it. And so they might take a person multiple times, and then they start taking their kids, and then they start taking their grandkids. And it just kind of, whatever is in their genes is something that these things need or want. And so they just kind of stay with it. Now, as far as I know, I have only gotten one report, very vague. I have no details. I only know that which actually is kind of ironic now that you think about it, my biological grandmother had told someone before she died. So she died when she was 42 of cancer. She had bone cancer. And she had told somebody that she had had a UFO encounter. That's all I know. I don't know if she was abducted. I don't know if she just saw it. I don't know anything. But ironically, that's the same person I look like in my family tree, which I do find kind of odd.
Yeah.
It's like very, like, to the point where when my son was little, like I said, she passed away obviously. My mom was 12, so I wasn't around yet. And my mom has this picture of her, in like a high school picture or something, up in the cabinet. And my son, when he was little, he would point at the photo and call it mommy because he thought it was me.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's the thing, though. Like you're saying, you're a skeptical person. I'm a skeptical person. So where do you draw the line at coincidence? And then, you know.
Yeah, I know, right? See, and that's why I'm like, so what I try to do is I try to eliminate everything that I can. And that's why I'm trying. I'm like, well, is it a coincidence? Like, but there's this. So I try to weigh all the options. Because on one hand, I'm like, I was potentially dreaming. I was asleep. There was no recollection. A lot of people remember they get whisked away through a window or beamed through the ceiling or the wall. Or I didn't have any of that. There was no to and from. It was just boom, I'm there. Boom, I'm back. Nothing in between. Had I had the equipment necessary for what they probably wanted to do to me, I would then have some evidence because my husband's fixed. So that would have been hard to explain.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, an alien impregnated me. I'm sure he is very anti. He doesn't believe in anything. He just calls it all hocus pocus. Even though I have sicked the spirits on them twice, and they actually listened, and they did some crazy shit right in front of his own eyes, and he still doesn't believe it.
I mean, some people just don't want to believe it.
Yeah, but I mean, come on. When the treadmill turns itself on right in front of you and does not turn off until you unplug it from the wall, take a hint. And one of them, I mean, another thing too is I left for work and he called me and he was mad at me because he thought that I had brewed a cup of coffee in the Keurig machine with no cup and just left it for him to clean up. It makes me nauseous. So I hadn't touched the Keurig machine in 3 months. It was just, I would use it for hot water for hot cocoa, but that was it. And it happened after I left for work and before he got up. So it waited for me to leave to be like, it's not her. She left. And it brewed a whole cup of coffee with no cup all over the counter. And then I was telling him because he's like, oh, maybe it was a glitch. I'm like, do you know how the Keurig works? I'm like, one, you have to turn it on. Then you have to lift the lid, put the lid down with a cup in it, and hit the button. That's an awful lot of movement for a technical problem. He's like, oh, it was just maybe a short. I was like, really? Because it's never happened again. It's just, and it only happened right after I told him. I was like, I know you're here. Bother him. He doesn't believe me. And the next day it started happening.
So you have spirit activity in your home?
Oh, it's anywhere that I am. It just follows me everywhere. With being so skeptical, I really do try to explain everything away. I try to look at it from all angles before I try to make a decision. And even sometimes, like even with this, I am still struggling with myself to be like, excuse me, that was an abduction scenario, right? In my head, I'm like, I don't know. But again, if something were to fly off the shelf next to me, I'd be like, oh, it's just a spook. It's fine. Like it happens to me all the time. I'm used to it. I'm comfortable with that. It's been like that since I was a kid. It's whatever. But then this thing that has never happened before happens, and then I'm really skeptical about it.
Yeah.
And I just think it's really kind of weird. I don't understand why I am like that. I've not been put in that situation till obviously recently, because I feel like I should be pretty open to it because, I mean, that's what I cover, right? That's why I talk to people all the time and all this stuff. And I would tell them I have a really hard time believing it because I've never experienced it. Boom. Like a week later, I'm got somebody in my belly button. Trying to get in my belly button. But yeah, it's just really difficult for me to try to figure out what it is because I'm trying to come up with anything. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I mean, well, I take medicine for my mental health stuff, but I don't take anything that could cause any type of hallucination or anything. Aside from, well, something probably was poking around in there, I don't really have a good explanation.
I mean, that's the thing. You're going through all the stereotypical telltale signs of someone who had a real experience.
Yeah. But it's just so weird to me that my brain's like, But did you? And I don't know if maybe it's just my own bias because of how media and all of that has portrayed people, that I'm like, am I crazy? I can tell you I've seen a demon. I've talked to people that are dead. I've seen people that are dead. I interact with them all the time. And that to me does not make me crazy. But if I say I'm abducted by an alien, I'm like, oh, great, I'm crazy.
Okay, so we got to talk about that. We got to talk about that. Obviously, you've apparently had a connection to the spirit world your entire life, apparently.
Yeah, pretty much. So I remember being a kid and I thought it was normal to know. I just chalked it up to, I had a really good sense of knowing. I didn't know how, but I always knew when something was wrong. I always knew when there was someone there. I could feel people, whether they're breathing or not, apparently. And I didn't think anything of it when I was a kid. It was just a weird thing. And I found out that apparently I have some sort of empath thing going on. There's a bunch of words that people have thrown at me to explain what I am. I have not understood most of them because I don't know that much about it to be like, oh yeah, like this is what I do. I can say these are things that I do. I don't know what causes it or why it, I don't know why or how or when. I can't control it. I can't just, summon Great Gertrude, Great Aunt Gertrude from the great beyond and talk to her. I don't know how to do any of that, but I know that they'll talk to me when I want them to. It was just things where this is a horrible thing. I can tell people this. Everybody assumes that if you're an empath, that you're very sensitive to other people's feelings. You're very soft. That is not true. I will fess up, there are some of us who don't realize that it's called being an empath. I just know that I know what you want. I know what I want. And I know how to manipulate you to get what I want. Because I can feel whatever it is that you need. And I know how to do it. People would be like, how did you know that? I'm like, I just know. I don't know. I just know, and I go with it. It goes with my gut. I tell people all the time, I always know. They give me the willies. Or they give me spidey sense. And people hate it because, even in, dating when I was younger, no one could get anything past me. I would always know. But then when I was about 15, 16, I went toe-to-toe with the best way I could describe it. It was a demon. It was not a person. It was a thing, but it was not a person. There was no he, there was no she, there weren't any factors that you could, attribute to. So now if something is around me, sometimes I can pick up on like a mental image of what they look like. Are they a boy? Are they a girl? Short hair, dark hair, whatever the case is, I can sometimes picture them. And so I know who I'm talking to, at least how to talk to them, because I know about, what age they are and all that. But there was nothing. It was a void. It was almost as if this thing was nothing but a black hole sucking something. Like, I don't know if it was energy or what, but it was taking something from me. And it was 1.5 feet, 2 feet from me. And I was like dead staring it down for a good couple minutes. I talk about that in one of my, so if you go, I think it's when I was with Travis, I started talking about my first hauntings in that house. And that's what I'm talking about. I go into all the details. I think of one of my pictures I drew, I tried to draw what I saw. I'm not the best artist, but, and that happened. And I don't know, nothing happened to me to I guess, provoke it. It's just I got in the car and it was there. And then it disappeared.
Just out of nowhere.
Yeah, that one showed up maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and I hadn't seen it since I was 15. And it showed back up at the house. So it's been with me this whole time. It just hasn't shown itself until recently.
Whenever there's a spirit around, let's just say you like walk into a house, what does it feel like to you?
Okay, so the best way, I call it the willies. I know that sounds really weird. It's not a very good descriptor. But depending on what it is, you get all kinds of feelings. Again, with that empath, I think kind of factors in. I could walk in and be like, oh, like there's someone here, but they're cool. Like they're chill. They're not going to do anything. But I can walk in and something comes in after we've already been there. And it's like everything. The best way I could try to explain it is, let's see here. Imagine you're okay, we're gonna play a little make believe for a second, okay? So assume you're a caveman. You're minding your own beeswax, and you walk out of your little cave, and out of you can feel that it's like that instinctual. There's danger nearby,
Right?
and a T-Rex jumps out of it doesn't. I guess it could jump. It's got long legs. It jumps out of the trees and is staring right at you. That feeling of fear when, you get the goosebumps, the hair stands up, and your immediate response is run away as fast as you can. It is not safe here. That is what you sometimes get when you've got something negative around. It's very much, it's almost uncomfortable. So either that fear factor, some of them are, I've been watching a lot of Monk on Netflix.
Yeah.
Have you seen that show?
I'm aware of Monk, yes.
Okay, so Monk is very, very, very OCD. So if you were Monk and someone walked in and they had one shirt sleeve rolled up, one pant leg on the other side rolled up, and half of their buttons were undone. That uncomfortable feeling until he can fix it and make it go away, that squirmy, you feel like you're just crawling in your skin feeling, you get that too. So sometimes it's just like something's not right. You know that, especially if there's a lot, I get that way if there's a lot of spirits around, because there's so much going on that I get a little overwhelmed and I just get kind of squirmy. But some of them too, like I said, you walk in and you don't even really have to say or do anything. You can know that someone's there and kind of, I don't know if you guys have done this, but we'll go with a parent or a sibling, I guess. Everybody's got a parent, right? So you're in your room, you're on your phone or whatever, and you're not supposed to be on your phone because, it's past 10 o'clock or whatever. Excuse me. And you can hear your parent coming. You can picture in your mind, you can see whichever parent or sibling is coming up and down that hallway because you know them. You can feel them. You can see them. You know their footsteps. Maybe dad walks faster than mom. Mom, whatever, wears a certain type of shoe. Right. You can picture in your head what they look like. It's similar to that, only I have never met these people, but I still somehow can see. It's like they let me see them without actually appearing as an apparition. So I almost wonder if maybe it takes less energy to do that, to communicate that way, to be like, hey, this is me. I'm talking to you. Like, I'm trying to talk to you. This is what I look like and all of that, instead of using all the energy to actually physically show up. So sometimes it's like that, where you don't even notice anything. You just get a mental picture and you can be like, oh, okay, so there's a man in here. And then you can use your equipment usually to ask it questions and verify whether, it's right or wrong, and stuff like that. Some of them, if they're angry, you get angry. If they're just, because I know everybody just assumes that they're all very negative spirits, and I don't believe that. I think sometimes they're just here. Sometimes they're just, hanging out. it's not like there was some catastrophe that is keeping them here. I think sometimes it's just maybe that particular person had that extra energy, and so when they passed, something, it almost like there's like an extra something there that lingers because they had more as they were alive than most people do. So I think that some of them, you get some emotions, especially if you're in those residual hauntings where it's kind of on repeat. They're not always bad. So I've had some people tell me there's like they'd be at a wedding ceremony, and it's like people get married and then they walk down and then it starts over. And I mean, that's a happy occasion. So you can feel joy, you can feel whatever, but there are obviously also the negatives that happen where the person's stuck there probably because they were brutally tortured and whatever. So I think it's just kind of different. So I don't know what it feels like when everybody else feels them. I just know that because I can feel a lot of what other people feel, that's what it's like for me, is I just know. Sometimes if they are a very strong spirit, something doesn't go well. I've had this happen a couple times, but not very often. I get very nauseous when certain ones, like I was on a ghost hunt at the Ohio State Reformatory, and we were doing a seance in the church. And I thought I was going to blow chunks everywhere. I was fine when we started. Halfway through, I got super sick, and then it sounded like something fell in the back of the room. And as soon as it fell, maybe 30 seconds later, I was fine. So whatever it was, it's like I felt it come in, it did its thing, and then when it left, I felt better. I've had a live show where I was on there live, and I'm here in my studio, and I had to leave. I had to turn it off and leave. I was so sick. I thought I was going to spew everywhere. Something was so negative, and it was making me feel so uncomfortable that I was extremely nauseous. And when I turned my spirit box on, it kept saying, it was very aggressive. I know exactly what it was. It was that thing that I think that was sitting with me, the non-human buddy over here. I got to watch talking about him because sometimes he likes to bloody my nose and turn my lights out. So
bloody your nose?
Yes, it's happened in a recording before. I had a spontaneous bloody nose in the middle of recording. As soon as I started talking about him, or it, I just call it him, but it didn't like it. So my nose started bleeding, and then I apologized and moved on. And as soon as I apologized and moved on, it stopped bleeding, and it was fine. Wow. And then all of my video content for that episode was erased. It was just a black screen.
How weird.
So, yeah, that one's not very friendly. But that one, when I put the spirit box on, it was say, get out, go away, leave. I mean, it was very, very aggressive. Like, get the hell out of here. I don't want you here. Go away. And I was so sick. And as soon as I left, I closed the door of the studio. As soon as I closed the door, I felt fine. It was just whatever was in there it did not want me in there with it. Have
you had other experiences where you've, I guess, physically been attacked or whatever?
I almost got murdered at Ohio State Reformatory, and now my nose has got some blood on it. That's fantastic. Sorry, dude. Moving on. We won't talk about you anymore. When I was at Ohio State Reformatory, we were up, if you haven't been there, in the middle. So you walk in, and the cells are not like you would see in something on TV where they're like all against the wall and blah, blah. No, it's like a giant column in the middle of a huge building, and all around the giant pillar are jail cells. And then there's staircases that go up the one side and go around. So you have like one in and one out, and they're just stacked on top of each other. So we were on the third story, and we came around the corner, and I took one step, and I knew. The problem was I knew, and I disregarded it. I felt it, and I was like, whoop, okay. I'm like, something's down there. It does not want us back there. But we were on a ghost hunt, so what do? You go anyway.
Right.
So my friend that I was with was behind me, because she doesn't have anything. Like, she literally takes me as a radar to just kind of point me around to see where the spooky stuff is. And I took a couple steps, and I was like, I mean, it was like heavy. It was almost like I was walking against wind, but there was no wind. It was really weird. It was heavy. It just kind of got hot. And I mean, I was getting nauseous. I was like, man, I don't know if we're going to make it. We got maybe like second cell down, and she was probably, she started off right behind me. As I went, she backed off. So she was a few feet behind me, and something pushed me, like physically pushed me, like grabbed me by the shoulders, and I turned, and I was screaming at her. I'm like, run, 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 run. Like, just go, 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 go. This thing had me by the shoulders and was shoving me all the way down. And the only thing that keeps you from a 3-story drop are like 2 little tiny bars as a little buffer. That's it. And then it's just a 3-story drop. And it pushed me all the way to the end, and I hurried up and turned. And as soon as I turned, it was like it ran straight through and then went away. It just, as long as I was not on that side of the corridor, it was fine. But the moment I went to try to peek again, and it started to push me again, so we got the hell out of there. So physically, there's that. That was not fun. Here at the house, I have my kids like to pull pranks. They're generally more auditory than physical, but I'm pretty sure one of them was playing with my feet. My breathing kid is one of 5. The rest of them it was actually very, very horrible experience. One of them is actually where I had my first near-death experience. And so my kids just kind of follow me around everywhere. They have since I lost them. And I was in bed. I had my blankets on like I normally do. I have really bad issues sleeping, so I put a headband on. I put speakers in, and I play loop. I loop a song where it's just rain. And I put the blindfold on so I can't see the light and I can sleep better. And I put my headphones on and I lay, in bed. Have you ever been around a little kid, probably around 2 to 4 years old, and they pretend to tickle you?
Oh,
and they're
course.
like, tickle, tickle,
Yeah,
tickle,
yeah.
tickle. Yeah. And they just kind of like wiggle their fingers, even though they're not really tickling. Okay, that is exactly what I felt on the bottom of my feet. And I was like, oh, okay. So I start kicking my foot around, assuming maybe it was like a cat. I don't know. Cats don't move like that, but whatever. Again, skeptical.
Right.
I was trying to just shake my foot. As soon as I stop shaking my foot, it happens again. And I'm like, will you stop? And I throw my headphones off, and I look down, and there is nothing there.
Huh.
But something was tickling my feet. I have a man that's kind of a creeper. And if you go to wake someone up, but you don't really want to scare them, and you walk in and you like put your hand like on their foot just to let them know that you're there.
Right.
Be like, hey, like, okay, again, headphones on, I'm laying in bed. That happens. And I'm like, yeah, babe, what'd you need? Nothing. I'm like, okay. So I go back to bed. Then it's on the back of my ankle. And I'm like, yes, honey, what do you need? Nothing. What the hell? So I shook my foot a little bit, laid back down. Then it's on like my calf. It just feels like a man's hand on my calf, not squeezing, but just setting on there, just like let me know that they're there. And I'm like, babe, what do you need? And I shake my leg and it stops, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I go back to bed. You think I would have looked at this point, but I don't. Because apparently I'm an idiot. I just assumed it was my husband. So then it goes on the back of my knee. And I'm like, babe, what do you want? Nothing. I'm like, damn it. So I shake it, whatever. And I go back to bed. So then it's like halfway up my thigh.
Okay.
and I'm in a baggy t-shirt and a pair of breeches, and that's it. And so I have this man's hand. So then I'm like, ooh, hey, like maybe he's he's feeling a little frisky, right? And I was like, oh, hey, honey. And I take my headphones off, and there is no one there. But I can feel the hand on my leg. I was like, I mean, I can feel it there, and I am looking, and there is nothing there. So I was like, all of a sudden I started like wiggling around in the bed, and I was like, okay. I was like, that is not okay. That is not acceptable. Go away and do not touch me again. And then it stopped. So I was like, okay, cool. And I just went to bed because, having invisible people touching you is no big deal. But one of the ones that scared the crap out of me, it didn't involve anybody touching me. But as a parent, if you're a parent out there, you can relate to this one, kind of. You're going to have the holy pants scared off you probably, because I was even creeped out, and it was my kids doing it. So, again, headphones on, my husband's in bed, everything's quiet, and I hear, Mommy, on the other side of my door. And at first I was like, did I hear that? I'm like, that was weird. And I wait a few minutes because I just thought I was hallucinating or whatever. I was like, I remember looking at my phone. It was like 2:30 in the morning. That's like their prime time. They like 2 o'clock. And then I hear, Mommy. I'm like, so I pause my headphones. I'm like, yeah, Bug. I call my kid all kinds of weird names. I'm like, yeah, Bug. Nothing. I'm like, Booger, do you need something? Nothing. So then I shake my husband. I'm like, did you hear that? He's like, did I hear what? I'm like, did you hear somebody call me Mommy? He's like, I didn't hear anything, babe. It's in your head. Go to bed. Okay. So I go back to bed. A few minutes later, Mommy. I'm like, all right. I'm like, Bug. I was like, do you need something? Nothing. I'm like, okay. Then after like 4 or 5 times of this going around of just like, Mommy, Mommy, the voice that your kid makes when you have lost it, like you go down the other aisle at the grocery store, your kid can't see you, they think they have lost you forever. That terror in their voice, when it goes up a few pitches and kind of like cracks and they get scared, I hear that, Mommy, on the other side of my bedroom door. And I have so many goosebumps just telling you about it. Okay. Whew, that's really weird. And I hear Mommy. So, I mean, it was like reflex. Boom. I mean, I am up, headband is off, and I'm like, okay, so I'm running to the door because I think my kid's in trouble. And I open the door. Nothing is there. Nothing. So it gets better. So I'm like, okay, that was really creepy. But now I've got to go check on the kid, right? Because now I'm paranoid.
Right.
And I just feel like I need. And so I start walking towards my son's room. And I have so many goosebumps. It's just so weird. But I start walking. I take 2 steps towards my son's room. And all of a sudden, the hair stands up. And I realize, one, my son is 12, going through puberty. He sounds like this. He does not sound like Mommy. That's not him. So different tone. Not to mention, my kid is too cool to call me Mommy anymore. I'm just Mom. And I realize this as I'm walking towards his room. And all of a sudden I kind of slowed down and stopped. I was like, that's not him. And as soon as I thought that, behind me in my kitchen, you could hear, like giggling. Like, gotcha, Mom. I was like, what? And I was like, do I turn around? So I turn around. Nothing. There is nothing there. I peek in on my kid. He's sawing logs. Clearly never left his bed. Didn't even know I was in there checking on him. And I was like, all right, guys. I was like, you cannot scare me like that. I was like, I have to go to bed. I have to get up early and go to work. So you got to leave Mom alone. I need some sleep. And then they were quiet the rest of the night. And then I've been on the couch, and it's like you could sense them. And it sounded like someone, like a kid was standing right at the foot, the foot thing up on the couch. I was snoozing. And it sounded like it was standing right next to the foot thing. And it was like, Mommy. And it woke me up. And of course I look and there's nothing there. And it's again 2:30 in the morning. They like to wake me up at 2 in the morning. It's actually, and what's funny is I will try to go to bed and it'll be like midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'll turn the TV off to go to bed, and the TV just comes back on. It's like, nope, we're still watching TV. And like last night, I just left it on for him because I was like, there's no point turning it off. They're just going to turn it back on. And it's happened to me like 3 times this last week. Like I just get everything and I turn TV off and I go to walk in the other room and TV comes back on. I'm like, okay, fine, I'm coming.
So it's just like pretty constant activity.
I mean, sometimes it gets kind of quiet. Sometimes especially around birthdays, when it's around their birthdays, things kind of pick up. But it's pretty much, I mean, so when I record, I do video recordings whenever I do my podcast because so much weird stuff was happening. And I was like, no one's going to believe me. So then I started recording everything. And so on my Patreon feed, I upload all of my video content. And I mean, all of it. There's no editing. You get raw video for the whole thing on there. And I usually turn my cat balls on behind me and they'll be going off like in the middle of episodes.
Huh.
And they just hang out and hit the little sensor and I'm like, oh, hey guys, and some people, they react more to some people than others. But yeah, it happens. I mean, it's everywhere I go, like weird stuff. It happened at my last job. It would happen. Well, really any job, but it's really anywhere I go. There's always something happening to the point where I notice when it's been a while. Like if things are kind of quiet, it happens so frequently that if it tapers off for a while, I'm like, nothing weird's happened for a while. I wonder what's going on.
I mean, I've talked about it a few times on the podcast, but you know, I grew up in a house that had activity and I still live in that house and it still has activity. It's definitely not as frequent or intense as it used to be. But the television thing is actually something that I've experienced in the past couple of years, you know, turning off the TV and walking out of the room and it comes right back on. And I'm just like, okay. And it's the same. I've owned the TV for like years and like it never did that before. So why is it doing it now?
This has been happening for the last like 3 weeks and I've had this TV for 3-4 years. And sometimes it'll be like, I'll just think about the TV. I'll be like, I think I'll go turn the TV on. And the next thing I know, I hear music or hear something. I'm like, hello? Because I'm by myself. I'm like, hello? Who turned the TV on? I wasn't even in the room. I'm like, what the hell's happening? But it's like sometimes like I'll feel air. I've had things knock on the wall. Every time I go in the bathroom, the lights flicker. Well, only one set of lights flickers. The other ones stay on. So
whenever it's not a spirit that's directly connected to you and it's just a stranger, for instance, not everybody experiences this stuff. You know, there's some people that go through life, you know, like you were talking about your husband, it happened right in front of him and, you know, he still doesn't believe.
Yep.
So do you think it's something where like the spirits know that you will notice them?
1,000%. 1,000%. I think so. When I told you that other people know, I have had someone, I actually was at a ghost hunt at Ashmore Estates. I'm not going to mention the guy's name because he was he seemed a little bit standoffish to talk about it, but he made some comments and he just was kind of like, I don't know if I should talk about it. I don't know why, but whatever, to each their own. And there were some ladies there that were empaths. I mean, I could tell because I could just tell. And he did something that I find very interesting because I do it to people all the time. So I would, when I tell people I can do weird stuff that they don't understand, I try to explain the best I can. But I'll have them stick their hand out. And I'll put my hand over their hand. I don't touch it, but I'll put my hand like right over their hand and I can kind of like push like energy and their hand will get hot and they can sometimes feel like vibrations from my hand, even though I'm not touching them. Like I can send it. So this guy gets the 2 girls. It was like a mom and a daughter. And he was like, he's like, you guys are clearly empaths. He's like, I can feel it. And he's like, somebody else in here's got something going on. They're like, who is it? So I was like, yeah, that'd be me. Because I was like, I don't know exactly what the problem is. But he had me do it, and he was like, oh, okay. He's like, you're different. And I'm like, great. That's what you want to hear. And he was like, I don't know exactly, but you're definitely different. He's like, well, you've got some of the energy that they have. He goes, but you got some others. And he's like, do you happen to sometimes have this and this happen? I'm like, how the hell did you know that? I'm like, yeah, like all the time. And he never explained to me why. He just could tell that I was different, which really drives me nuts because I would love to know. But I think that whatever that energy is, they see it. And I think maybe that energy and stuff is kind of why I can see them or I can hear them. And I think the different types of energy is maybe, I don't know if it's like a translator or it's almost like a, night vision goggles or something. Maybe someone with one energy can hear them but not see them. Another energy might be able to see them but not hear them. Another one might be able to feel them but not do the other ones. And I feel like there's different types of energy, and I think that they see that. It's almost like we're a lighthouse. And okay, I can see the lighthouse, and that means the lighthouse can see me. So I think some of them come to us because they want to communicate, because it takes less effort and less energy on their behalf to communicate with somebody who's going to be easier to communicate with than to go to someone who has absolutely, they might want with all their mind they want to do it, but they don't know how, or they don't have something that is needed. Travis's story, when I talk about him, it was very similar. So he was communicated with, and he was a child. His mom was in the house. He was warned about a fire in his house by a spirit. And he's kind of like that. Like, kids are more open and all of that. They didn't talk to the mom to say, Mom, lady, go down there and fix this. They went to him knowing they could communicate with him. And it was like, hey, there's going to be a fire. There is a fire. Get your mother. So he went to get his mom to go down there and look, and they prevented their house being burnt down because he went to his mom. And I feel like, to me, that's a good example, because if they could just communicate with anybody, if they're going to communicate with somebody, why would they communicate with somebody that they don't know how they're going to respond, or if they're going to respond? Because why waste the energy on something you're not sure of? It's kind of like me and my husband. There ain't no way in hell they're going to go to him, because he's going to shrug it off anyway, because he's going to think it's not real.
Right.
But they pester me all the time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm trying to figure out if I'm seeing an orb or a bug in my room.
It's an orb or a bug. I am so skeptical on orbs. To me, every orb is a piece of dust. It is not real.
I was always the same way until I was coming down my hallway one night and the light in the living room was off. And there's this tiny, tiny, tiny little dot of light. And I watched it float across the room and go into the front door.
Okay, so was that an orb or a fairy?
Okay, so...
Ooh. You know what's really interesting to me, before anything paranormal happened to me, I was obsessed with fairies. They were real. I set traps. I tried to catch them. I bought all kinds of stuff like fairy toys. And I don't know what it was, but to me, I'm like, I knew they were real. I knew they were real. I just couldn't prove it. And so I spent years as a kid trying to get evidence against fairies. I
interviewed a guy about Bigfoot, and after we were done recording, and he made me swear that, I had stopped recording. He didn't want it recorded. He swears up and down that him and another guy on a Bigfoot outing saw a fairy. Like 100%.
Yep. I 100% believe that. I think there's what I struggle with is if so many of these things people believe in, you can't believe in one without believing in the other. Even if it's not a Tinkerbell, the fact that these fairies are so ingrained in culture all over the world for thousands of years, there's got to be some truth to it.
Well, whenever I say I don't believe in fairies, I literally mean I don't believe that there's things like Tinkerbell flying around. Let me be specific about that. As far as fairy lore is concerned, yeah, I definitely believe there's something to that.
You should go listen to my Icelandic elf sex episode.
What's wrong with you?
So this woman, I had to cover it. So I actually heard it on another podcast, and I had to dig in and cover it. This woman wrote a book discussing how she would frequently have sex with elves. And yeah, it's bananas.
I mean,
but yeah, she wrote a whole book on it. It's How to Please Yourself, but the ELF is all caps.
No, it's not.
It is. I shit you not. I shit you not. Go look at my post from the Icelandic elf sex, because I put a picture of the author on there too. She even gets into like positions.
No.
And yeah, I am not joking. 1,000%. I did the research. I covered it. It was great.
I oftentimes talk about how different people have different limits, that, you know, their bar is at a different position.
Yeah.
and my bar is definitely not to Icelandic elf sex.
It's just, some of the stuff is so funny. But yeah, I mean, it's just, to me, there's so many. Now, some of them are just, you know, I'm like, yeah, they're just fun. Like, but if there's a lot of information or a lot of potential sightings of certain things, I'm like, how can you not at least consider the possibility?
You've been experiencing this, you know, crazy stuff your whole life. What made you decide to start doing the podcast and go down that route?
Well, a lot of it, like I said, a lot of stuff happens. So to me, it was just like second nature. I've always been interested in, which is, I never understood why. I am the black sheep of the family. And I've always been into, you know, weird creatures and ghosts and fairies and demons. And I've always been very interested. Not like I had much of a choice, because it was pretty much smacking me in the face my whole life. Then whenever I had my first near-death experience, it just got worse. And then someone had me listen to a podcast, and so I listened to it, and it was okay. But then I found the Kryptonaut podcast, and I found them, and I started listening, and I could not stop. I mean, I loved it. I would listen to them. You know, at work all day, all this stuff. And because they're very down to earth. They're super nice guys. I mean, just absolutely phenomenal. And just listening to them and feeling like you're part of the, you know, you're part of the gang, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they have the really good community and stuff like that, you know, I talk to other people that listen and stuff like that. And that's what I want for my podcast is I want to, so like I'm part of their Patreon subscribe or whatever group. And they have like their Discord. So it's like all of the Patreon subscribers that have full-time chat that the guys are always looking at. So you can get a hold of them most of the time. You know, they'll pop in and chat all the time. It's just like the normal people, right? And listening to the things they covered and knowing how they do it and the things that I enjoy, I was like, you know what? I think I can do this. I was just listening to them, and I don't know what it was, but something about them just made me just be like, you know what? I think I would enjoy that, because to me, it is so hard. I'm in a small town in the Midwest. There is no one ever in my life that I have met that likes this stuff besides me. Until I started listening and I became part of their Patreon community. And then I got to meet, and once I got into the researching and the conventions and all of that, I was meeting other people where for the first time in my life, I did not feel like an outsider. I actually felt like there are people out here like me. I'm not crazy. These other people, they believe me. They don't just want to ship me off to the loony bin because I hear things or I see things, or I can tell you within 48 hours if you're going to die. They don't make me feel so judged, and they were very open. And I feel like I need that, or I'm going to go crazy. I mean, being the only one in that wheelhouse, like, being a black sheep is very crappy, because I am generally a social person. I like talking to people. I love meeting people. I like learning new things. I'm always curious. And it's always been a bad thing. But when I went to my first convention, it was like I landed and I was in a giant flock of black sheep that just were like, everyone was so nice. Like, the community, they're like, oh yeah, come in, like, whatever, like, yeah, let's go have some drinks, or let's hang out or have dinner. How's it going? Sit and chat, like, shake your hand. Like, everyone there welcomed me like I had been there for years. Everybody was so awesome. And like, getting on the social media, I met a lot of people. It's just like, I could always call and I've been out of work, but I make these little guys that I have all over my studio, and I'm actually really, really excited. So my first parapuppy got delivered this morning to another podcaster that I'm in. We have a group of podcasts that all work together. We share each other's trailers and all of that. And they came together, and almost all of them bought something from me because they knew that I was out of work. And they have them all up in their studios and stuff. They're fantastic. I love them all. I would name them, but there's like 30 of them, so I can't remember everybody. I don't want anybody to get upset. But I do little episodes, like little short ones, where I read my reviews, I read my or do a shout out to my patrons, and then I put trailers at the end so that you guys can have, an idea of other podcasts that are similar to mine. But yeah, so they go on there. But anyway, so one of the guys got a parapuppy that I custom made for him. Son of a bitch was huge. It's like 2 foot tall when you stretch him out, and it sits, and it's his logo's colors. I made him custom colors, and it's got a pocket in the mouth where you can put a cat ball for a sensor, and then there's options where you can build in pockets in the paws, so you can add more sensors to it if you want. And he just got his, and he's going to take it when he does his ghost hunt at the Conjuring House.
Oh, wow.
And I am so excited, because it makes me I'm very proud that I could have something out there that's doing something. I don't know how to explain it. It's just like a piece of me that goes out, and it's just really awesome, because everybody, has been very open, and it's been awesome.
For people who are listening that don't have any idea what you're talking about, explain to them, what you're actually talking about with the parapuppy, for instance, and what its purpose is. Oh,
sorry. Okay, so I hand make a bunch of stuff, all kinds of critters. I actually have some that I haven't even listed yet. But I crochet like a little old lady in my haunted house, because I was like, oh, I wonder if that would help, add to some activity. But I do everything. I've got 3 different size ghosts that I make. I've got Bigfoots that I make. I've got 2 sizes. I got a big and a small Mothman. I've got a big and a small Nessie. And they're all, and I got aliens, I got gray, I got green, I got big and small. I even have a Fresno nightcrawler that I make. And I crochet them all and stuff them. So they're just like little stuffed animals. And then I just made a chupacabra, the reptilian kind, not the mangy dog kind. And I just made a little centaur last night. And they're all stuffed in all of that. But Parapuppy is a little special. I got the idea. I'm not going to lie. I didn't come up with the idea all by myself. Although I kind of did. But I Googled to make sure. I didn't want to make anything. You know what I mean? And I Google everything to try to find a price. Because I try to do a bunch of research, try to figure out, is there anything like this out there? If so, what do they cost? So I try to factor all that into price mine on my store. So when you talk about this, because a lot of people make comments about the prices, but I'm just like, well, just for Parapuppy takes me almost 30 hours to make. So whatever you make at your job, do that for 30 hours and tell me how much money you make. So I don't think my price is actually too bad. Also, with Parapuppy, I put a little bit of a homemade twist on something that, so I get all my ghost hunting equipment from Ghost Stop. And Ghost Stop has a thing called a Boo Buddy. And a Boo Buddy is an 8-inch tall stuffed bear, just like a regular stuffed animal that you would go to the store and buy, kind of. Boo Buddy has a built-in EMF reader. So he's triggered by EMF and he lights up. So I wanted to make something similar. However, I don't know how to do any circuiting. So what I did with Parapuppy is I made him, and he has a pocket in his mouth. So you open his mouth up, and you can shove, really whatever you want to. That's okay. That sounded really bad. What you do is you open his mouth, and you can put in a motion sensor. If you wanted to put in, basically you put whatever you want in there. Some people, I have told them it's an option. I mean, I don't do it because I don't have any. But you can put in, say, a Bluetooth speaker. Mm-hmm. And say you want to have your phone and you want to Bluetooth the spirit box out of your Parapuppy. You can put a speaker of whatever kind you want in there and take it out. Or you can put the sensor in there, turn it on, stick it in his mouth, close his mouth. He's good to go. You could take it out. I made it easy to access because I didn't want to make something where when the battery died, you were screwed.
Right.
I wanted to make it so instead of buying another Parapuppy, you could just buy a $5 cat ball and shove it in his mouth. But I do have options where any of his paws really, I can put pockets in. So it's the same thing. You could put the lights into the pockets. So you take him on your investigations. My theory with my pattern was, again, everything is handmade by me. It all starts as balls of yarn and I make something out of it. I wanted something that if you took it to an old haunted house or haunted anything, if there were old spirits around, I wanted something that they would feel comfortable interacting with. And back in the old days, they would knit or crochet. They didn't do a lot of stuffed animals any other way because they didn't have the stuff.
Yeah.
So a lot of the really, really old ones would be crocheted, and I found a pretty generic pattern, so it would hopefully encourage the spirits to interact more with the toy as opposed to something where, because I had somebody ask me why I could put a sensor in just about anything I make, to be fair. But say you had like an alien doll. Well, if you have a spirit that's maybe a child from 1800s, they're probably not going to go play with an alien doll because they might be scared of it. Yeah. So I tried to come up with something that would be familiar to them. And even if it wasn't a kid, it might be, say, an older woman or something where they might have made something similar for their grandkids, and they might be curious to play with it because they might recognize something about it. So that's what those are. And you could do, like I said, there's different options on there. So I can add pockets just about anywhere. But I'm going to take mine with me to Paracon and see if anything happens. But yeah, I mean, anything really, but mine all do motion sensors. So with a Parapuppy, no matter what size you get or whatever, I always send it with one sensor. So you at least have one to get started with. But if you have other pockets that you want added, I have options where I can send you the ball in it. And I can leave a pocket so you can get it in and out. Or I can just send you the bear with no sensors and you can buy whatever you want to put in there is fine. I try to make it pretty easy and leave a lot of room so it wouldn't be too bad. But yeah.
Where is all this stuff? Where can everybody find your podcast, your merch, everything?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So there's a couple different ways. If you want to look on a website, I do have a website. It is www.cryptidscreepsandconspiracy.com. I know, original, right? And if you're in there, everything's there. You can leave a review. You can, rate the podcast. All the episodes are there. Depending on, it's usually at the top, depending on which phone or laptop, whatever you're looking at. There is a button to click for merch. So I am going to warn everybody, though. I have 2 merch websites currently. I have the Square. So if you hit merch on my website, it will send you to the site where all my handmade stuff is. That is the only place to find my handmade stuff. I do also, if you go in any of my social media, there is a link at the top. It's a Linktree link. And if you click on it, all of my stuff is there too. The website's there. Anywhere you want to listen's there. I have both the TeePublic and the Square store. One of them, I tried to put the titles in where one's like T-shirt, cups, and mugs. One's handmade stuff. So you'll know the difference. You can click on any of those. There's places to donate. There's places to reach out. You can go on the website if you've got any encounters or experiences, questions, anything like that. You can always send them on the form on the website. Or my email is cryptidscreepsandconspiracy@gmail.com. So you can send it there too. I'll also be at, so again, Paracon, which I don't think it's going to come out before I get there. But the end of September of this year, I will be at the Indiana Bigfoot Conference. And I will have a booth there as a vendor. And then I will be, in November, I will be at CryptidCon in Lexington, Kentucky. I do not have a booth there, but I will be there all weekend.
If you've had an encounter with something unexplained and you'd like to share it on the show, email me at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. If you get a chance, check out the website, bigfootcrossroads.com. You can find all the past episodes, links to merch, links to the social media, everything you need, all in one place. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.